Hello, welcome to Patron Media. I'm your host, Terrence Anderson, and today we're going to make our very first beat with the MPC 500. Not only the first beat, but we are going to turn it on for the very first time from scratch and figure this thing out together because I have no clue how this thing actually fully works, but my understanding is the 500 is along the lines of the 1000, 2500, and the 5000. However, the difference is the way you interact with the sampling features of this device is more like the 3000. Now, if you know anything about me, I'm not a huge 3000 fan. Not because I don't love the sound of a 3000, because I think the 3000 is amazing. But by the time I got into production, which was roughly around 99, 2000, when I started taking it really seriously, the MPC 2000 XL already existed. And I was already used to chopping in waveform. I was using Sony SoundForge. I can't even say that with a straight face because it's so laughable at this point that that's what I was using. But Sony SoundForge to cut sounds up, to put into Cakewalk Pro Audio 9, and sometimes using Pro Tools 5.14, one of those Pro Tools. Back then, before switching over to Logic Pro 5.551 on a Windows desktop. So it's been a while. And then I dabbled in Fruity Loop. Back then, it was what it was called, Fruity Loops 2.5. That's my foray into DAWs, like for production, not just recording. And Reason 2.5. Oh my God, Reason 2.5 was really good, but I digress. By the time we got into all of that, we had Recycle and all these different things to chop up waveforms. And even on the 2000 XL, I would actually chop up a lot of my samples on Recycle and then put it into 2000 XL. So the idea of chopping by number is like the thing I didn't want to do. One of the big studios that I worked out of had a 3000, and one of the producers we worked with that allowed us to get access to production being sent over to Dipset for Joel Santana, they had a 3000, and even then, I still didn't like it because it's an interesting experience. I would visually see the waveform, but it was more so to check it because I would hear the problem and then want to fix it, but then I wanted to see where it was to confirm that I got it right. Does that make sense? Because that's how my brain works when it comes to this stuff. So essentially, I was able to chop by listening and not paying attention to the numbers, but I wanted to confirm that the chop was right by seeing it. So it was kind of a weird thing, and I still do that to this day. So we're rambling on a little bit too much for no reason. So what I have on the desk in front of me is the 500. I'm going to set the camera up so we can actually look at it together. And we're going to turn it on from scratch for the very first time. Again, I literally decided not to touch this thing till this video because I wanted it to be genuine. I don't want you to ever think for a second that I'm just faking it, phoning it in, and doing all sorts of stuff. I don't do those things. I actually sit down and say, okay, how do I want to make this video work? And because I know how all these other MPCs work, this one is more like a compressed version. The 500 is the first MPC post JJOS that JJOS couldn't get into. It was the one that allowed Akai to say we could move forward without worrying about this pesky guy hacking into our stuff and changing things. Right after the 500 was made, they made the 5000, and that's why there's no JJOS for the 500 or the 5000, simply because they were able to lock the code in a way that he couldn't figure out how to get in. My understanding is, unless you have the root files for how to open the cab file, you can't get into the cab file to change things on the 500 or the 5000. And Akai is never going to release that. So we could forget about that. But that being said, these two machines were pretty rock solid for what they are. And let's take a look at the 500 and see what we can do with it. Now, a couple of things about the 500. The 500 is battery powered. It can run on 6 AA batteries. This one doesn't have any batteries in it, so I have it plugged in. And it is a little bit more limited than the 1000, but not by much. It does have 32 voices, just like the 1000. It has up to 48 tracks of sequencing. So that's the actual limitation on this compared to the 1000. I believe this 1000 can do 64, but I think that's also because there's only 4 banks of 12. And if you know anything about the way the MPCs work, each bank is 16. So in this case, it's 12 because of the pads. Each pad can function as a full-on holding point for a sequencer. So it's kind of a weird dynamic of the way it functions when you start to get into like song mode and song structure. But I don't think I've ever heard of a producer ever using all of that. Like not on an MPC. Even on the bigger ones, no one's ever really done that. Somebody should do that. Somebody should really do that just for the hell of it to see what happens. But nobody's actually ever pushed these things past their limits when it comes to that stuff. The voices is a whole different story because I've definitely done that. And I know others who have as well. But like I said, 32 voices, it can have up to 128 megabytes of RAM. This one only has 16 megabytes of RAM on it because I remember watching a video from him when he was working with it and he talked about that. And I'm going to check it when we turn it on just to see, but I'm pretty sure he still left it that way because, again, this is like a fun thing to play with, you know, to work on things. You can do some amazing music, but most people who have these, you know, for the most part, they kind of just like make something with it here and there and then move on to the next thing. There's a couple of hardcore beat makers that do use these and they put them to work. It does support wave and MIDI input. So it does have MIDI on the back, in and out, regular standard MIDI. It also has the ability to read wave format in 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz. It has a USB port, but the USB port is mainly for data, so you can transfer data in and out of the machine. And it has the ability to layer four layers of samples per pad. So those are all like the surface of what makes this thing, you know, an amazing device. The hard part of this, again, goes back to the fact of having only 16 megabytes of sample space, you know, internally, because that's what's in here. That means at max, I have 136 seconds of sample time. Now, that sounds like not a lot, but you got to remember that most hit records prior to, I want to say, 2003, 2004, that were made on these drum machines didn't have a lot of sample space, 32 megabytes, give or take. And when I'm talking about producers who were using older machines, not the ones that use the new ones, but the older machines up until that point, it worked. I mean, the one we did, the whistle song for Joel Santana, that was barely 5 megabytes. So it's definitely doable to make a hit record with like no real space. Let's get into it. So we're going to turn it on. Okay, this was hard. Okay. A 2-line screen to see everything is rough, like real rough. But I got through it. So off camera, I had to do a little bit of like figuring out how certain things would work, and it was taking a really long time. So I'm going to go back to the main screen, if I can even go back to the main screen. I think this is it. Yeah, this is the main screen. So for me to load what I just loaded was a bit of work. First things first, I needed to go and say shift and go to load, right? No, first I had needed to go to mode and hit load. And then from there, it was a whole process of figuring out which thing I wanted to actually load. So in this case, I decided I wanted to try to load a project, which did not work the way I wanted it to. Because remember, like I said, things aren't matching when it comes to JJOS and here, or even the other Akai OS stuff. So I couldn't do that. So I'm going to go back and say all sequences and files. And I'll go into folders, and I'm going to take a look in the folder, and it's not here. I can't see all the sequence and song information. So I need to go back here. I can try sequence. No. I can try samples. It sees the samples. So I can use this to load the samples. If I hit do it, I have to select a pad. So I'm going to put it here. And then I say do it. Now it's on the pad. Now this is starting to make sense. So we're going to go ahead and add just a bunch of stuff just for the hell of it, right? So if I say Drake kick, But here, I hit do it. If I say, let's see, and I can audition, but it's over here. I have to hit play. This is so not how the other ones function. You know that kick. Let's see. Do it. It's starting to slowly but surely make sense. And I'm going to pick that snare. I know what it is. We know what that is. All right. So let's see. Did it go back? Oh, that's an interesting thing. Let me just confirm this before I even say anything. I want to confirm it. Hit do it, do it. That's annoying. Okay. Okay. The first file in here is the bass kick, followed by the Dre kick, followed by the other Dre kick that I have, and the Dre snare. So when I got to this snare and I selected it, I noticed that it goes back to the first one. So let's see if I pick something else. Let's see. I'm going to pick that. So like I'm going to round out the bottom with just the kicks, and I have the one snare that I like, right? This is another kick. As soon as I hit select, pick the pad, and I hit do it, it goes back to the first sample in the list. It doesn't stay at the sample you're rifling through. So I have to scroll past all this stuff just to get to the next thing. And we've already heard me work on this beat before, but I'm going to go ahead and just load the samples again. And this is going to be a little annoying because I'm already realizing I'm going to have to scroll through a bunch of stuff to get to it. What happened? Where did it go? That's annoying. Okay. I'm already getting annoyed with this thing. Okay, let's try this again. So sample, assign to pad, do it. Replace existing file, rename. You know, let's just pick rename. Do it. Right? Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Your boy's an idiot. We got to start again from scratch, I think. No. Nope. We're going to deal. Okay, we're going to deal. Let's see. If we go to mode and we go to program. How do I get to program? Program. Okay. I select program A or B. That's interesting. Right. Okay, so sample assign. Okay, this is because I did load the sequence. So interesting. I loaded the project. When it loaded the project, it loaded all the samples, but it did not load it didn't load the sequence. That is interesting. So this is an actual track I worked on the 1000 prior. That's okay. I just wanted to be able to work on something with this. So let's get all the samples in the right place. Okay, so that was B. Let's go to C. So C, we're going to do the fours. So 4 for 1. Yeah, I got to scroll all the way through every single thing just to get to the next one. That's a little frustrating, but again, this is the compromise with something like this versus the 1000 versus the 5000 versus the 2000 XL. There's going to have to be some kind of compromise to make it fit in this form factor. Okay, next thing is to get to the main sequence. So now, how do I set this up? Let's see. Let's see. We have 120 BPM for the tempo. I want to lower that, but it's okay. I guess I can do it this way. We're going to take this down to 100. And I don't remember the BPM of this track. I know it's a little bit faster than that. Sequence track parameters, loop last. Let's see, what's the end? Interesting. Okay, I do want it to loop. Only showing 2 bars. How do I increase this? Length. There we go. Should I do 4 bars or 8 bars? I tend to function in 8 bars, but we're going to do 4 bars because I want to make my life easy. So do it. Also, 16 levels doubles as do it. Full level doubles as cancel. And let's see. Signature 4/4. Sequence name. We're not going to change all that. I don't care about all that stuff right now. I just want to get something done tonight. So parameters, track 1. It's playing. Good. Now I need to hear the metronome. Okay. All right. So now this is a little loud, but that's okay. Let's figure some things out. Okay. Before I even go any further, I already see an issue I'm going to run into because of the way I program things. Can I go into the parameters for this? I need to set some mute groups. And I don't know where that is. Filters, attack, decay, velocity level, filter banks, tune, start. Voice overlap. Mute groups. There it is. Okay. We're going to put that in. Wait. Oh, it's only on or off? That's interesting. How many groups do we have? There's only 4 mute groups. Huh. Okay, how does that work? Oh, so I picked in bank B, I can choose which ones are in that mute group for bank B. So if I'm in bank A, I have to choose. Wow. Okay. I don't like that limitation, but okay. Let's set this up. That's going to mute this. That's going to mute that. That's going to mute that. That's interesting. So if I want to mute these, they would interact with this instead of that. I don't like. Okay, so we're on the same page. I just set up, pads. What are these? Because I can't see the numbers. Set up pads 4, 7 through 12 to mute each other in bank B, but these can't be muted because they're a part of bank B. Does that make sense? So if I set these up to mute, like let's say I pick this one, that's gonna cut these off. But if I wanted it to play together, I have to do it all separate. Does that see that? You get what I'm saying? Like, I literally can't put this in the same mute group because it's currently in the same bank. So that's frustrating. I don't think there's a way around that because again, limitations. Okay. There is something to be said to having too few features. I will say that. Okay, let's see. Voice overlap. Maybe this. So what is this? Okay, so for now, that doesn't really affect what I'm trying to do. Are there any other things past mute group? Notice sign, reset, let's see, program numbers. Nope, none of that stuff is relevant in this scenario. Like that's the note I want. However, I don't like how bright that sounds. So we're gonna undo this. We're gonna see. Let's see if we can fix this. No, we don't want to do that. We want to get into parameters. And I want to do sample, not level, tune. No, I want to filter. Yeah, now let's try that all over again. Okay. Yeah, there we go. That's what I needed. Okay. You're getting the idea. And I don't like that. Okay. Okay, so now I'm starting to get it. Starting to cook. We're starting to cook. We are starting to cook. Nope. Thanks. Okay. All right. Let's see. Next track. That kick is hard. That snare is hard. Frustration number 2. Filters. I can filter this sound, but what it seems like I can't do is pick the type of filter. That's annoying. What does that do if I change this? That did nothing. That did nothing. Okay. So I can filter out the highs. And basically leave the kick. What I want to do is filter the kick out. And it looks like I can't do that from here. That's annoying. Decay, velocity into filter, that's interesting. Velocity to tune, velocity attack, voice overlaps, everything but the thing I want to do. I'm learning. Let's go back here. Sample assign, sample level. We might change that in a moment. Sample tune, one shot, velocity range. Yeah, you could only filter, you could turn it into lo-fi, but you can't filter it and take the bass out. So there's no high pass. There's only low pass. That's interesting. I'll work with it. Also, I'm realizing now that I've done this track is too damn fast. I need to slow it down. Now it's like, okay, now this is like a 95 BPM track instead of 105. So to mitigate this, what we're going to do is we're going to delay this, but then we're going to lower it. Sample level. Let's change the tone of this kick. We can still tune. At least we can still tune. Let's see how far it goes down. Minus 24. going to do it that way because I don't know if that's going to erase everything. So we're going to do it manually. We're going to just let it ride through. That is the old school way of doing it. So let's check what we actually have loaded here. And I already noticed the problem. I'm going to have to set these samples on one shot, velocity range, because I don't want to hold anything down. What I like to do is, what I would like to do is set the poly. There we go. So we're going to set that to mono. We're gonna combat this whole everything's in a bank scenario by putting these in mono. Okay, that way I can control this a little bit better. So let's try this. Okay. Oh, which one of these I prefer? I just noticed the problem because that's going to be one bar, that's going to be another bar, and don't think this is going to work the way I think. So I have to try this a different way. Okay, let's try this. All right, for the sake of this track, I'm going to use this one instead of that one, and then I'm going to use that one. So these are the two I'm going to use because this would have worked if I made it 8 bars, but because I made it 4 bars, I don't have the space to make this work right and sound right in my head. So all right, where is note repeat? Oh, note repeat's right there. Okay, let's do this. I don't like that. No, mode, where's note? How do I change note repeat? Is it shift and note repeat? No. Timing correction is 16. There's a swing. I don't usually use swings. I'm gonna leave it though, because I don't feel like messing with this right now. Again, we want the goal right now. The goal today is to still just finish something. I don't like that though. It's gonna bother me. Okay. Where did I find it? Timing correct. Timing correct is 16. Can I turn the swing off? 50% swing, 58 swing. Let's try 50. Let's see how that sounds. Yeah, 50. 50. Why wasn't it 50? Okay. Main screen, let's do that again. Okay, so then all right, that took a little bit longer than I expected, but that was not bad. I'm not going to save it because I already made a beat with all these sounds. Um, but that wasn't so bad. It was way better than I thought it was going to be. That's hilarious to say, but it's true. Okay, my takeaways from this experience. First thing, working in the 500, I can totally see how this is frustrating. Especially when you've come from having more access to more features. But it is very livable if you can wrap your brain around the way things function. This is a very limited machine. And by that, I don't mean in the sense of its capabilities, in the sense of power to sequence and produce, because this is just as easy as my 1000 when it comes to laying the samples down. The difficulty comes in with the way things are set up in it for you to get to certain functions. And then when you get to certain functions, how limited it is. I was assuming that this was going to be more along the lines of the 1000 where it comes to the program window. Let's start there. The program window in the 1000 is feature packed. Even without JJOS, it's feature packed. You have 4 layers of samples that you can lay into it. You can pitch each of the samples individually, which I'm assuming you could probably do here, but you have to get into the layers. And with a 2-line screen, that's a bit of work, but it's not impossible. So you have that. You have a filter section, a full featured filter section, where you can decide high pass, low pass, band pass, and I think there's like one other option. In here, you only have low pass. So you can, and I always get confused, even though I know better. It's low pass. You can filter it from up, bring it down through the frequency range, so you can just have just the lows, which is great if you have a sample and you do the old school trick where you lay the whole beat and then you copy the sequence from one track to the next track and then just filter it down so that you only have the bass. That's the old school trick for bass. But that's it for that. And then in that same window is where you basically do your mixing. I think there's a dedicated, let me just take a quick look before I even say it. No, there is no dedicated mix window. So you have to mix in program. And by mixing, I mean you change the level of the sample, the volume output for the sample in the program window. But once you do it, you've now set the sample's maximum volume output. So essentially, you're doing the mixing feature while you're setting up the program. And realistically, you probably wouldn't do this until, just like I did, after you've already laid the sample the way you want it to sound. Then you're adjusting, this is too loud, or this is not loud enough, things like that. So you start making your adjustments along there. Now, you can't go above a certain level because 100 is 100. That's what it is. So you'd be lowering everything else if you want this sound to be dominant and vice versa. The mute groups, I do not like how the mute groups work in this. So the mute groups in this thing seems to be, or I should say, it is set up by the banks. So if you want to mute something, you need to make a decision when you're laying your samples and pick the pad group. So if I want to mute a bunch of samples in bank A, that's fine. So that's all 12 of the banks, all 12 of the pads in bank A can mute each other. And I can select which of those are in that mute group that actually do that job. So if I want the first 6 to mute each other, I can do that. Then the last 6 won't do that. That's totally fine. However, you can't have anything in bank A, mute anything in bank B. That's rough. Not impossible, but that's rough. So that makes you really take some consideration in how you layer things out on the pads. That also means that I wouldn't be able to transfer things from the 1000 to the 500. Now that makes more sense because that sequence that I loaded in here came from the 1000 with all its sounds, and all it did was load the sounds. It didn't load the sequence at all because it can't understand that data because it doesn't function that way. That makes sense, which also makes me think that going the other way is probably going to be the same thing. I can load the sounds from the 500 into the 1000, but maybe not the sequence. That might also have a lot to do with the fact that the pads are laid out as 16 on the 1000 versus on the 500 is only 12 pads. So that's going to play into that as well, I think. Outside of that, once I got past those things, this got easy quick. I still haven't trimmed a sample. And we're not going to do that tonight because I think we've done enough for now. This is the first beat on here. I'm going to fiddle around with it a little bit more and do a couple more things. But I think the biggest takeaway from it would be you have to adjust your expectations with a device like this. And I have to change my modeling mindset of how I thought this was going to go. This is definitely not like the 3000. The 3000 has a lot more features, a lot more capability. The 500, who's the 500 for? So the 500, I feel, was Akai's, foray into this idea of making a device that was portable for starters, like the test bed for the portable MPC, what the Live became later, but not fully featured to the point of being able to cannibalize what the 1000 could do. And that makes perfect sense when you think about it from that perspective. The 500 literally is what my 1000 is in my scenario. My 1000 is my sketchpad. This is a sketchpad. This is where you start and you fiddle around with some ideas. Because of the powerful ability of the MIDI sequencer on here, using this to control another device, very doable, very feature-packed for that. Because just the way MIDI works and how the sequencer in any MPC works, it's going to handle its business. But dealing with the way that I have to finagle the program window, that like I said, that was my biggest hurdle. But I mean, I overcame it, but it was still a hurdle. I think the next time we work on this, I'm going to go ahead and sample something in and test that out and see how it feels to actually try to chop in here. That's probably going to piss me off, I'll be honest with you, but I'll get it done just because I think it's something we need to do so that we can understand it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, would I recommend you buy a 500? I would say it's a 6. I'd say it's a 6. The 1000 is really powerful for the money, to be honest with you. This is not competing with the 1000. But, and I will say, if you can get it at a price that makes sense. So this to me is a $200 to maybe $300 thing. If it's been modified, how Parrish has his modified with the knobs and the raised jog wheel and the pad cover and everything, and if someone has done the pads over and done all of the maintenance inside of here, I could see this going for like $350 easily. At the same time, at $350, you're knocking on MPC 1000's door for a moderately taken care of, maybe even just beat up 1000. You're looking at like $350, $400 max. A one in really good condition is going to run you $4 to $5. And it really should run you $4 to $5. If you're seeing 1000s for more than that, that's highway robbery. Don't mess with that person. They're just trying to steal your money. I got my 1000, the modified one that I have. It was originally a black one for $375, I think, at Guitar Center. So, yeah, you're not that expensive, to get. I think if you found us at Guitar Center, it's probably going to be like $150, $200. I would say check Guitar Center if you're looking for a 500. This is definitely a fun little device if you've never had an MPC. And it's still a kind of a fun device for someone who owns another MPC to get a different perspective, because honestly, the timing on the older MPCs The reason why people really love the old MPCs, well, I should say one of the reasons, is that timing is just so effortless. As you saw from the video, once I started to fiddle around and get past the fact that I had to fight with certain things in my head of how I thought things should function, and I just dove in and said, let me just make a beat. Everything's laid, pads are set up, the samples are where they need to be, and things are cut off. The beat making process was like this, because the beat making part of this is easy once you have everything laid out the way you like it. So I think that's where we're going to stop this video. If you like what I've been talking about, like, share, and subscribe. Join me next time for the next video. And definitely go to my website, petromediainc.com. That is a great way to support me doing this. This is what I do. I do this full time now. I just make beats on these devices. I share my knowledge, and I'm starting to put together some content related to my past history of how I did production and what I still do today, and how I work with the One Plus and the 1000, the 5000. So definitely check out some of that content, and a lot of sample packs and kits and things are on the site for you guys to pick up. And I'll see you in the next video. Catch you guys later.